So last week we talked. One of the things we were looking at was just the amount of energy that was going to be required as we kind of shift into this Gen AI world. And one of the things, as a firm that we're looking at is just, what are some of the kind of the choke points and as we go through this and, what to kind of be looking out for. And I came across a piece that the Brookings Institute compiled recently that I thought was interesting. So full plagiarism here. As I go through these slides, I pulled it down from a report they released. But, as we push towards sort of, the zero emissions, the challenges that we face, permitting is clearly one of the bottlenecks that have really kind of stymied the speed and the scale at which we kind of roll through this transition. So as I said, I just pulled some charts out of that report, which I thought were somewhat enlightening. As you can see here, they did a sort of a survey with the different project managers as far as what was the leading causes of cancellation of some of these renewables, the wind and solar projects. And the top three that you see there are local sort of ordinances, zoning laws, that connection to the grid, which we touched on a little bit last week. And I guess not surprisingly, but community opposition was a big factor as well in the rationale or the reasoning for the cancellation of the projects over the last 7 or 8 years or so. And it's interesting when you think about permitting, one of the areas that might surprise you, it's not permitting at the federal level. So when you think about the sort of the three sort of laborious federal permits, it's the environmental impact, the Clean Water, the Wetlands Act, and then lastly the Habitat Conservation Act. But those are the three big federal permits that tend to take a long time to kind of get through the process. But if you look at the wind and solar projects, less than 4% of them have actually bumped up against that permit requirement. So it's really not at the federal level that you're seeing the slowdown. It's really not there. And I got what this chart is showing you is actually over time, the federal permitting process has gotten much easier. The speed at which the permitting process goes through is really sped up. If we look at I know this chart is a little bit harder to read, but the dots higher up in the chart, that's a longer, so that y-axis, the vertical axis, is the duration of getting through that permitting process. You can see, back in 2007 to 2015, the median duration for renewable projects to get through the permitting process took 109 months, right? So 9+ years. And then you compare that with the more recent period, 16 through 23, at just 47 months or just under 4 years. You can see that permitting process at the federal level has actually gotten much quicker. And it's really, again, the challenge has really been at the state and local jurisdiction level. And again, this is just sort of graphically showing you the number of projects since 2010 that have been contested. And that green bar, that section of the bar is the local and state level. So you can see that's really where the problem is been kicking up from a standpoint of getting these things through. And this chart is just showing at the local level, there's just so many other things that you got to deal with at the local jurisdiction level. And wind is a little bit tougher than solar on that front. One of the ordinances is noise, but the big one really is sort of zoning laws and infringing on property lines and things of that nature. And that's really what the challenge has been, is really from a standpoint of everybody wants clean energy, everybody wants to save the planet, they just don't want it done in their backyard, right? So that's really been the big challenge. And what this chart is showing you here is there are from a standpoint of the sort of the public pushback, there's 324 outright bans across 303 counties across the states that have banned on wind or solar projects, 32 solar bans and 292 wind bans. 21 counties in that mix have actually banned both. And then in addition to the outright bans, you've got another 26 solar and 17 wind moratoria. So, this is really the struggle with getting that, with getting these projects through. It's much more at the local level. I'll be honest with you, this chart, it was hard for me to kind of follow through the numbers, but I think the point to take away here is there's a lot of permitting going through the pipe, if you will, that at the end of the day they give up. And at the bottom is the important number for me, is that in 22, 1,600 of these requests got pulled. Last year in 23, another 1,500. So there's a bit of frustration taking place at the project level in dealing with this. In this chart here is really about again the interconnection into the grid, and here again you can see that the lines moving up as you go across, which is basically showing that the time to interconnection has been increasing over the course of the last 2 decades. Just to give you some numbers, 75% of the requests in the early 2000s, so on the left hand of the chart, 75% of those requests were in commercial operation in under 3 years. Last year, it was fewer than 25% were in operation under 4 years, and 25% of those took at least 6 years. So, the dynamic is that it's getting harder and harder. And when you think about interconnection, as you go across, some of these things got to go across state lines. That's also problematic, because now you're going to have to get approval at multiple levels from a transmission standpoint, which has been a really tough sledding for those approvals. And just lastly, I have here, you can see the amount of capacity that's in the queue, particularly out west, where in California you have a lot of capacity in the renewable space that's looking to bring online. It's far more than we currently have online today. So there's a lot of capacity out there, and the challenge is going to be, how do we bring this online? And so to me, it was pretty eye-opening that there's still a lot of challenges that are in front of us. And one of the biggest ones is really from a public standpoint at that local level. There's a lot of contesting going on by people who just don't want it, so to speak, in their backyard. And I don't know if there's an easy solution to deal with that. So with that, I'll just open it up for comments or questions.
Thank you, Sean. So comments or questions, Jeff? So how are you, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? Thank you for the presentations this week and last week, Sean. One question I had was with the upcoming election, and let's say President Trump does get elected, I wanted to just hear your thoughts on, what sort of pullback we can expect from the IRA, because I know that's a big tailwind, right, for this sector. Yeah, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Jeff. I don't know if there's going to be much in the poll. It's hard to say. It's hard. I think it's going to be difficult for him to undo, the act itself. Um, where I see the challenge here really has nothing to do at the federal level. It's much more localized. I didn't grasp it until I kind of went through the Brookings Report. I don't know how you get, at the state level, all of those, different, constituents across the map to come together for this to begin with. So I think it's, I think it's less of a risk of funding getting pulled, and really, how do you address the issues that are in front of us?
Adam Blanco?
Thank you, Sean. Great presentation. I've got two questions. If you can go back to the slide that has where it's been banned, solar and wind.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the ban for wind in Tennessee and that concentration there. Is that based on environmental issues? That's a major waterfowl fly from
Yeah, I
south.
don't, Adam, I don't have the details as to what the basis is for
That concentration.
yeah, but it clearly you have a state that is receptive to their constituents' concerns about it, and they've received enough contestants that they've just said we're just gonna put a halt on it, and we're gonna ban it from that standpoint. Now, from an industry standpoint, is it are they less apt for renewable that state itself? Yeah, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with it as well.
Gosh, last time I was in Tennessee, they had a fly ash problem.
Yeah.
One last question. The connecting to the grid, what is the issue there? Is that a cost for the utilities? Is that what's the challenge there?
Again, there's a process going through. Each state is going to have their own permitting process there, and it's really the interconnectivity across state lines. It just means you're going to have to get that approval multiple times, Adam, and that's really I think they said, interstate, if you will, connectivity is something like 7 times more as far as the duration of getting through the process. So again, I think it's more of from a standpoint of you're dealing with multiple jurisdictions in the connectivity component versus, let's say, on the wind or the solar farm itself, you're probably dealing with one jurisdiction. Here, you're going to have to go through multiple, and that's what's really driving the duration. It's just multiple approval processes.
So it's a bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
And it can't get fixed at the federal level, right? So this is that you're driving it at the state level.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with multiple states.
Michael Hammer, why do I have a feeling you're about to teach us something?
Oh, Sean, I'm living your presentation. So I posted about in the chat about a solar project that got canned in Columbiana County, Ohio. And here in Carroll County, there's another project where leasing agents are speaking with folks. I was speaking with a friend of mine. And many landowners, farmers look at this as a way of getting a revenue stream to ensure that the land gets past down through the next generation, right? So it's not necessarily the landowners who are against the projects. It may be other people. Back in 2011, I was looking at putting up a 100 kilowatt wind turbine on my farm. And even though it never happened, but one of the neighbors who has a small property with his home on it said, I paid for the view. And my response was, you didn't pay me anything for the view, right? But
Yeah.
I was surprised because with your presentation and talking about the IRA, I was surprised that you didn't mention the 7 hydrogen hubs, because those are massive projects. And that's actually one of them. Arch 2 is here in Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and that northern tip of West Virginia. And these are massive projects, and they're going full bore ahead. And the problem that landowners like myself have with it is with the CO2 injection, the carbon sequestration, there's just so many unanswered technical questions. What strata are they looking to inject in? And they haven't even done the stratigraphic test wells.
And
And
have they, just curious, Michael, have they been exempt from the wetlands, the 404 requirements?
so the thing about it is, for example, these are what are called Class 6 injection wells, and there's really not many of them that have been permitted and in operation. So there's not a lot of experience in the US with them. There's other countries that have more experience. And so in Ohio, for example, you only need 5 acres for an injection well like this. Okay. And so you're not necessarily impacting wetlands or anything. There are questions about the transport pipelines. There's been talk that some other pipelines may be converted for this. So there's a lot of talk starting with landowners like myself. I've been to 2 meetings in the past 2 weeks, and I had mentioned in last week's talk about Steubenville, Ohio, and I was just at one in Cambridge, Ohio. Because there's a lot of concern about what are the impacts going to be. Because, for example, when you inject liquid CO2 and it hits water, it forms carbolic acid, things like that. And the shallowest formation they're talking about is the Clinton, which is only like 3,500 feet down. And then there's deeper ones, Rose Run and whatnot, but they haven't clarified which strata they're looking at. So this is a huge issue. And one number that I saw is by 2049, they're looking at injecting 1.38 billion tons. Right. So that's pretty massive scale. And this is just going full bore ahead, and there's not a lot of talk, reporting or discussion about it.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, Michael. Although, again, I would, as landowners, and your rights to contest this particular project. At what point is your voice heard? What's the, are they just kind of just rolling right through it?
So there's 2 bills, one in the Ohio House, one in the Ohio Senate, that are being worked on behind closed doors. Nothing has been disclosed about it. The other issue in Ohio, so this is what's called open pore space. And the other issue is who controls it, the surface owner or the mineral rights owner, if they're severed. And Ohio law isn't clear. Most states, the surface owner owns that open pore space. Okay, so there's just all kinds of issues percolating out there.
Well, I knew you would teach us something, Michael.
You
That I know.
didn't necessarily want to know.
No, I'm going to be in Ohio in a week's time. Maybe if you're in the Columbus, Granville area.
Well, let me know ahead of time and
I
we'll,
just did.
no, I mean a specific, let's get together
Okay.
this day, this time.
All right, fair enough. I will be in New York for this Tuesday briefing and leaving the 3rd, and I will be there that weekend. So I'll try to find a window with you. Maybe I
Okay.
can do a 361 informal gathering. Austin.
Yeah, firstly, question for Sean. So permitting is hard for renewables. Is this across the board, though? Are all forms of energy installations seeing those same headwinds, particularly permits across multiple state lines? That seems a pretty common problem.
Yeah, Austin, I'd say, the transmission interconnectivity is an issue regardless whether it's whatever the form of that power is, whether it's renewable, fossil fuels. That will be that'll be an issue for everyone, right?
Have states put similar bans in for various? I mean, I'm assuming that if you created a chart for nuclear, you would have a much broader set of bans across the country. Are there other types of power that people have banned?
I don't know off the top of my head, Austin.
That would be an interesting one to know, whether some people have said, absolutely no more coal here, absolutely no more gas here. I'm very curious to know whether people have specifically targeted renewables, or this is just a general problem that people are really slow on allowing things to be built. I actually had a question for Mike Hammer. So you mentioned 2049, 1.5 gigatons sequestered. Is that an optimistic projection? Is that global? Is that just the US? Could you elaborate on that number?
Oh, that's just the US. That was off a Department of Energy website.
Okay.
I don't have the Ural handy.
Sure.
It was just as I was researching for my own purposes, I came across that number. And the other thing, for example, Arch 2 is being shepherded by Battelle, which is a large government funded think tank, whatever, here in the Columbus area. But it appears that a company called Tenaska is actually the implementing company. They're saying they're going to be operational by 2027. Yet no permits have been applied for, all sorts of things haven't been done. That is an incredibly aggressive schedule.
Agreed. I guess my specific question is, what is the potential to 10x or 100x that? Global emissions are at the 50 gigaton a year level now. By 2049, with the way things are going, they're going to be expected to be higher. While it'd be nice to have 1.5 gigatons going back into the ground, that is a small fraction of what we emit. So, one of my big concerns about sequestration is not that it can't be done. It's, can it actually solve problems, or does it become a distraction?
Or does it become a problem down the road?
And yes, it certainly has a potential to become a problem. So
I want to pause on all these questions, but let's keep it going. Andrew Fish.
Yeah, just on was a couple adding on to a couple of questions and Sean's charts. So one, Sean, a lot of the cancellations recently are interest rates. The local utility wrote off $100 million, canceled the offshore wind, and they have to buy carbon credits. And the interesting thing is the offshore wind project also has a problem, because when you do offshore wind, you need a contract with a utility. The utilities don't want to give out long-term contracts. We're the only country that operates that way. Taiwan, for instance, has a market for wind storage and the users that you can exchange. So that's a problem we need to solve. The California thing is a 6-year backlog for applications, and it's bureaucratic, but those applications have technical components that have to be dealt with. So it's it's just resources, I suppose. And I know a fund that bought 6 old coal plants. And what they did was they were already interconnected. So they put solar farms in California next to the plants with smart energy. So there's some creative people getting around it. And the last thing was the CO2 sequestration. There's several technologies. There's injection of gas. There's creating solid and shooting that in. And they're really very different. So to Austin's point, you have to also look at how we do it. Just some comments.
Thanks, Andrew. Aaron?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I got into the industry through working for a green hydrogen plant, and I broadly agree with almost everything someone said, from the bureaucracy of it to the bankability of it. But one of the things that I guess I could bring up that hasn't been mentioned yet is, just like the interconnectivity to the power grid is important from a data center standpoint, there's going to be interconnectivity from a communication standpoint. And is there a thought that satellite systems are going to become more in vogue as those data centers get built, or is that going to be a piece of it? And then I'll just throw out just a comment to the group, which is that there's some potassium acetate technology that has come out of Rice University that's really interesting from a decarbonization perspective. It's used to treat waste plastic, and so waste plastic becomes a feedstock to the process, and then you can treat that plastic, put it in the flue, and you
just muted yourself, Aaron. Aaron, you're muted.
There you go.
He's muted again.
You're still muted.
I left off, so my apologies.
You're back, though. You want to finish your thought?
The thought was just that there's some potassium acetate technology which treats waste plastic, sequesters carbon dioxide, and then the plastic itself becomes a usable product for refined products down the line. And so that's the most exciting decarbonization technology I've seen to date. And then the last technology, or the question I have for the speaker is thoughts around what technologies and what's the strategy going to be for developing out the data connectivity to these data centers. I'm in full agreement that we have essentially infinite demand now for compute, which means infinite demand for data centers. And so edge computing technologies and/or satellite communication technologies, I'm just curious what the thoughts are there.
We haven't put a lot into the satellite angle, Aaron, and I think part of that is that, again, latency is sort of the big issue there. So I think it's going to be fiber. We're of the view that some of the cable operators are going to be in a good position where they've got the capacity for backhaul and all that stuff. So for us initially, anyway, we think there could be a benefit in that space. Less so again on the satellite, just because I think you're going to have the latency issue that'll.
Well, I'm excited to hear you say that, because I think there's going to be some innovations in terms of photonic computing. And so fiber optics into photonic computing offers a potential future where we can get 100x today's compute power at 1,000x reduction in the total energy use. So that's exciting to hear. The fiber optic is what you think is gonna win out.
Other comments, questions? Just those in Europe, like Caroline, if you have any views on how you're approaching it, or anyone else?
Hi there, sorry, no. I think my question, my question would be, because I come across recently several infrastructure projects for the US. So usually there's some solar activity currently that we're seeing. And given what's been presented today, my only worry is, the future of is solar still a good investment, and or should we be looking at different technologies? Or what are your thoughts around that? I would say.
Well, I think there's going to be a place for all of it. To be honest with you, I think the really what we're trying to highlight is, we know we have this substantial increase in demand for electricity coming, substantial, and the challenges to meet that are substantial as well, and that's really where we're going. So I mean, we're going to get there one way or the other. Solar will certainly be a part of it. Wind will certainly be a part of it. Nuclear will be a part. All of it. We're going to have to draw on all of it. I don't think there's an easy answer as to how we speed up the process to get to that scale, based on the needs that are right in front of us. I don't have the answer. I think there's going to be extreme challenges, but I think that it all, all of it will participate in power generation as we go forward, whether it's solar. And again, I think we talked last week, I think fossil fuels via natural gas is going to have a play in it as well.